It's funny because I was just trying to figure out, I was like why so obsessed with the defenses, but now I understand for Showdown.
Yeah, because I'm going to be doing the contenders and stuff twice a week. I'm going to be playing them. So, like, I wanted to make sure that was right out of the jump.
Happening, everybody. Josh and I talking about football, which, by the way, starting tomorrow, football season. So Josh and I going through some processes and, of course, all the different tools we have available at Stokastic.com, which could be yours totally for free if you sign up at Owner's Box, who is the sponsor of our show today. So if you guys have not checked out Owner's Box, a couple reasons you should. Number one, they've got big NFL contests going off this weekend. And I don't know if you've seen this yet, Josh, but overlay seems somewhat likely because their big contest has 15,000 something entries they need for it to fill, and they're at 700 so far. So I think there's a pretty good chance that there's going to be overlay at Owner's Box. And you guys, if you sign up using the link we have below, you are going to get a couple of things. First off, you're going to get a deposit match bonus of up to $500, totally for free in your pocket. You sign up at Owner's Box. In addition to that, 1 free month of our max data plan for football season. So our Sims tool, our contest generator, all of that comes when you make a deposit and sign up at Owner's Box, which, by the way, only has to be a minimum of a $10 deposit at Owner's Box. You deposit $10, you're going to get all of our tools over at Stokastic for free. But the best value at Owner's Box still is depositing that $500. So they give you that $500 match for free. And as you guys come in, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Josh, how's your day going?
Been a journey, man. It's been a journey. Up early, cranking out contenders videos for baseball, strategy show. Took my dad to physical therapy, grabbed myself a cocktail for lunch, made some progress on NFL projections. Hopefully that I can do that. I can get that finished by the time I get to midnight. So then when I wake up tomorrow, I'm good to go. It's been good. It's a good day. Right, it's a big, decent enough slate. I was going to play the early today, but I just didn't have like the time to get set at 12:30. And I hate those days where it's 12:30 lock, 4 p.m. games are still in that slate too. It's just those slates tend to piss me off, so I skipped it. So now I'm just locked and loaded for the main. I get to jam Spencer Strider and other terrible teams.
By the way, a great question in the YouTube chat from Peter. I've never know how to pronounce Peter's last name. Wasaki. There's no way that's correct.
Wasabi?
I tried my best, Peter. Yes, to answer your question, we will have Sims for Owner's Box. It is not in there yet, but I know because I've been talking with our data team that the plan is to have the Sims all up with Owner's Box around tomorrow afternoon. So I'm going to be doing a NFL show specifically for Owner's Box. I'm going to build out lineups for both the Showdown slate and for the main slate. So the plan, yes, is that we're going to have Sims carrying Owner's Box as of tomorrow afternoon. And Juan Garcia in chat right away saying, is everyone just jamming Strider? Yeah, more or less. And I think that's a pretty good place for Josh and I to start talking about the slate. And one other thing also, a little bit of football news, is if you guys haven't checked out our podcast channel, we do have podcast exclusive content that's going up there. Yesterday, Ben and Lofty did a 30-minute show that you will not find on YouTube. You will not find on Twitter. You'll only find on our podcast channel. So that's one reason to sign up there. And then also, if you leave us a 5-star review, we are going to pick 3 random people. Oh, not random. You got to leave us a 5-star review. And of those people, we're going to pick our 3 favorite reviews. First place gets 1 year totally free of our NFL package. Everything on the max plan, one year totally free. And then second and third place are going to get a month of our data package for football. So if you guys want a chance to win that, just go to the YouTube, go to the podcast channel, leave us a 5-star review and leave us a nice comment and a chance to win. If you want to be funny, probably a better chance to end up winning that prize. Might stand out a little bit more. But Josh, answering the questions that we're getting about Spencer Strider here, everybody is jamming him. He's projected for north of 50% ownership. In cash games, we don't even have anything to discuss. You're playing Spencer Strider in cash games. In tournaments, he also projects extremely well. The only question becomes, is the north of 50% ownership too much in your opinion?
Not for me. I think he's properly owned at around 56%. I have his proper ownership a little bit lower than that, but when you start to like consolidate on a slate, it's not just linear at the top. It starts to scoop a little bit. I have 71%. I have no problem having more Strider. Would I have any issue having less? Like, no. Like when push comes to shove, this is a decision for like a 150 max situation, but he is so clearly the top play today that it's really hard to even compare him to anything else. Like Scherzer and Verlander, even let's just say Scherzer. Let's throw Verlander out. these guys aren't comps for today. Like, they are projected in very dramatically different ways, clear across the industry. So he's on an island, and it's not surprising. There's a reason he's likely to win the Cy Young, or at least certainly be in that mix. His strikeout prop is exceptional. Every bit of it looks really good. The run total against the Cardinals, he's fantastic. 12-3 isn't all that difficult to get to with some of the value that exists. So I have no issue with it. I am jamming Strider. Are there situations where like he doesn't pitch well? Yeah, of course. Like, we all know what the downside is, but that's not the way that I look at this.
Yeah, so I have a little bit less than you, but I'm not that far off because I finished running my lineups through our simulation tool here at stochastic.com. And yeah, I have them in 60% of my lineup. So I'm with you. I think the ownership is more or less fair. If you guys are playing one lineup, play Strider. And if you're playing 10 lineups, you can make a case to put Strider in all of them. So I don't have any real issue with the ownership. I'm a little bit overweight to the field, not anything significant, because when somebody's projected for 56% ownership, it is kind of difficult to get like massively overweight to them unless you're just pressing the lock button. But I've got 60% Strider, and I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, he's awesome. Do you have any Strider tickets or anything that matter for you?
I do have. So it's weird because I have closing line value on Strider Cy Young awards. So it actually super annoying because I don't think they're going to win because Blake Snell has better, like the traditional stats people care about. Like his ERA is significantly lower than Strider's. He's also pitched better in the second half of the year. So I'm pretty sure Blake Snell is going to win. Here's what's annoying though, is like I bet Strider like 14-1 to win Cy Young before the year started. And now he's like 3-1. So he's not going to end up winning. And I have like all this line value, and it's just not going to mean anything. Same thing like last year, although he should have won Rookie of the Year over Michael Harris last year. But I had like all of these Strider like 10-1, 12-1 Cy Young tickets that would have paid out like tens of thousands of dollars last year. And then what ends up happening, like he just gets screwed by the voters because he gets hurt towards the end of the season, not even significantly, but the Braves were so far, just entrenched in their spot in the standings where it didn't matter. They just shut him down into the playoffs. And then Michael Harris played well the last couple of weeks of the year. And that was the difference between Strider at one point being like minus 400 to win Rookie of the Year, and then it closing is like a pick 'em between him and Michael Harris. So
gotcha.
Gonna get.
Well, I'm rooting for him. What's I haven't looked at the line. Minus 195 for Snell on FanDuel, 250 for Steele, 550 for Strider. Okay.
Yeah.
He goes out there and mows down 10. Like, what does that 550 become?
Like 300.
Yeah, that's so dumb.
The other thing too, I mean, if you look at like Justin Steele's numbers the second half of the year, they're also fairly insane.
Yeah, no doubt.
Like, I'll pull up Justin Steele right now.
Yeah, it's definitely like a 3-horse race between Snell, Steele, and Strider.
And the other thing is, as of like 2 weeks ago, Zach Allen was like minus 120 to win the award. And then he has a couple of mediocre starts. Blake Snell's basically been unhittable. And then got Justin Steele doing his thing. So like Zach Allen's like 30-1 to win Cy Young. So he's like way uninvolved now in that kind of discussion as well. But second half of the year for Justin Steele, yeah, I mean, he's got a 3.18 FIP, 2.77 xFIP, but then also just the strikeout stuff. He has a 28.1% K rate in the second half of the year. So Justin Steele has been really good in the second half of the year. But right now, I do think it's Blake Snell's award to lose. And the Padres aren't playing for anything else. Their team is massively disappointing this year. It's like the other day, Snell's pitching well, and I have to think it's because of the Cy Young implication. They just left him out there for like 115 pitches and get himself some more counting stats padded to his total there. But anyway, we've got a lot of ownership going to Strider. I think it's more or less warranted for today. As per usual, he's kind of on a price tier of his own. Nobody is all that close to him. But with that said, we've got Max Scherzer at 11K. We've got Justin Verlander at 10,200. If you were not paying up for Spencer Strider in one of your lineups, Josh, are you more inclined to go to Scherzer, Verlander, or neither?
Probably Verlander. But I do think Strider on paper looks better. But if Verlander is going to be 5% owned and Scherzer's 16, like I don't think the gap between those two guys is all that massive, considering there's the $800 gap. I think those guys should be way closer than their ownership shows. Let's see. I think they should probably only be separated. Like if their ownership right now is a total of like 16% to 5%, so like 21. I think that should be more like 12 to 10. So I'd be more likely to want to get to more Verlander, just knowing how this works. But Scherzer is the guy that like projects better.
I'm underweight to both of them. I'm not really getting to any of Verlander. I have very minimal amount of Scherzer, which is kind of going to happen. I'm slightly overweight to field on Strider. You could only be really just the way the pricing is on this slate. Like it's really hard to be overweight to multiple of these high end pitchers. So I'm a little bit overweight to Strider. As a result, I'm underweight to field on Scherzer, hardly getting to Verlander, just based on the fact that Scherzer, to what you were saying before, is like 3x the ownership of Verlander.
Yeah.
You could definitely say that Verlander, the cheaper price point, is a good pivot. Something else as well is that if Verlander goes out, pitches well, and gets the win, that's a win bonus that Max Scherzer does not get. So there's a little bit of leverage from that standpoint as well. So I can make a case for him in tournaments, but at the same time, I'm just not really playing either of these guys, and I'm prioritizing Strider.
Yep. I have 11% of Verlander, so technically I guess I'm taking a stand, but it's not a stand that really impacts the rest of my day. 2xing a 5% owned guy is like not that kind of thing. I basically have the same amount of Scherzer of 11%. I've one more Scherzer lineup right now than I do Verlander. I'm still waiting for that Angels lineup to come in, so I won't run anything for another half hour. But right now it's 71% Strider, 11% Scherzer, 11% Verlander. So if you're curious where I'm going for the real pay up options, it's pretty clear.
Yeah. And then if we talk about the FanDuel slate, there is like a little bit different in terms of pricing tier on these pitchers, because you got Strider's 12,300, Scherzer's 10,400. Then you got Verlander at 9,500. So he's a little bit less expensive there. But still, like if you're going to pay up for a pitcher on a single pitcher site like FanDuel, I think it might as well just be Strider. And then I wouldn't worry too much about these other guys. If I'm going cheaper, maybe go to Clark Schmidt because of the matchup against the Tigers on FanDuel. But I really do like Strider above all the rest on FanDuel, especially where we only have to roster one pitcher. Getting back to the DraftKings equation here, Josh, by the way, if anybody's in Discord and has questions for us, at me and we can answer those.
Yeah.
We also have a super chat from our friend Ace of Spade. Ace of Spade wants to know about DK tiers. And then he also says he hopes to get some NFL tiers going for the NFL season. And then he thanks us. Ace of Spade, we appreciate the super chat. Always like to see you on Live Before Lock. By chance, did you run tier stuff today, Josh? If not, I have it in front of me.
I didn't.
All right.
I actually deleted it from my sheet this morning. As funny as that sounds, I got a couple of people asking me about it because obviously I had been posting it pretty regularly, but it was just not getting the same sort of interest that I would have liked it to get.
Yeah,
so I gave up. Oh, you know what? I could actually run it. I didn't delete the data.
If it makes you feel better, we use it on the show all the time, because what ends up happening is it hasn't come up over the course of the last few weeks or so, because we just have had a little bit less interest. But there used to be a point in time we would constantly get asked super chats, questions in Discord about tiers. And so what we would do is I would have lineups built for tiers and just ready to go for the show because I would anticipate it. And what we would do is I would say who I got to. And then because I've been doing the show with Neil for a lot of the year, he would pull up your Twitter account and we'd show your Twitter stuff on screen. We kind of go back and forth. So we probably got more use out of it on the show than you did for yourself. But all that aside, I do have tiers lineup to run right here, Ace of Spade, and we could go through some of the options. How long would it take you to get that pulled, Josh?
I'll have it shortly. The last time that I ran it was August 23rd. I just saw that was the last salary file in there, but it wasn't getting a lot. Oh, happy birthday. It wasn't having a lot of traction on Twitter, so I stopped caring.
I like that tweet just about every day, and we used it on the show.
You were in the minority.
Yes, I was, but I'm
a lot of internal likes on that one.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people in the YouTube chat that like the tier stuff. But if we go through the options that I got to, I'll start by saying this. You can make Brave stacks in tiers today, which I highly recommend doing. It's very rare that you get a team as good as the Braves that you could build 4-man stacks of, which you can do in tiers. And in tier 1, you've got Ronald Acuna as an option. Pretty good matchup against Dakota Hudson, which it's going to be the same matchup for all the Atlanta Braves. So tier 1, my favorite option is Ronald Acuna. Tier 2, Matt Olson. Tier 3, Austin Riley. It's funny, in tier 4, Marcell Ozuna as a standalone is not the player I get to the most. But when you consider that I got to Braves in tiers 1, 2, and 3, I do think for the purposes of building lineups, it makes the most sense to include Ozuna in tier 4. And then in tier 5, I like Pete Alonso, who just doesn't belong in tier 5. He's a much better hitter than that. Tier 6 for me is way more spread out. It's hard to find one hitter who stands above the rest, but I did get to Anthony Santander more than anybody else.
Okay, so I don't know if this is going to be Jordan. If I send you a graphic, can you bring that up on the screen easily? Okay, I'm gonna DM you a graphic quickly.
Oh, nice. Those would be like the pictures Jordan and I share with each other after the shows, but like a little more educational.
I'm sure they're quite educational. All right. I got my highlights in there. We're good. Refresh. Let's move that tier around. Go Ronald Acuna. I don't think anybody is surprised by that one.
Yeah. No, yeah. Ronald Acuna in tier 1 is, I mean, Ronald, even if there wasn't the stacking options, Ronald Acuna compared to anybody else from a fantasy standpoint, the answer is going to be Ronald Acuna this year. He's just been crazy. No player's benefited from the rules changes in terms of counting stats more than Acuna because he just steals all the bases now and nobody can do anything about it.
He's amazing. I love that dude. I really, really do. I'm so happy that he's on my favorite team. And like I care about my favorite team again.
So did you start when they won the World Series? Is that when you started caring about them again?
I didn't give a shit.
Oh, what made you start caring this year then?
I started watching baseball again. So like, it's not that I didn't anti-cheer for them when they won it, but like I wasn't actively caring. If it were this year, I would be more likely to be watching it. But with my dad being here, like we've been watching a lot of baseball, so like I'm just more invested in the baseball season than I have been. Like I've watched more baseball this year than I have in the past 10 years.
Yeah. So I know for me, for instance, because I have like my parents just moved into my house, just set up a TV for my parents downstairs. Got a big one that I'd gotten them for Christmas last year, and we just never set it up. But that was like my Christmas present. I got them like a 90-inch TV. So just set up that downstairs. And I'm going to watch like a lot more Giants games this year for that reason. Cause like I haven't been a fan of like individual teams for a while, but like my dad's like the world's biggest Giants fan to the point where like they start the year 0-4 and he like wholeheartedly believes that they're going to win out the season. And it's like, well, they still win the rest of their games. They win the Super Bowl. Like until they are actually mathematically eliminated, he believes every year that they're going to end up winning the Super Bowl. So that's the way my dad is a fan of teams.
Sure. I don't only like them when they're good. They won the World Series and I ignored it. I clearly didn't only like them when they were good.
Yeah. And I mean, they happen to be really good now, which I'm sure makes it really
more. If they weren't, I would be watching just as much baseball this year as I had otherwise. It's not like I'm selectively only watching the Braves. It's fun because their offense is like awesome and Strider is awesome. But if they were shit, I would still be watching baseball every single day. I've watched more baseball this year than I watched basketball last year.
Really? That's surprising.
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's on during the day for a couple days. So it's just easier to soak it up from like 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Whereas with basketball, I don't have a choice. Like I can't stay up past 10 if I want to do my content for the week. So like I have to give myself that hard out. But with baseball, I don't have to be up at 5:30 to do the process show at 6:30. Yeah, so I can watch games till midnight, sleep till 7:30 and get like a real night's sleep instead of waking up at 5:30, going to bed at midnight and wanting to die for the rest of the week.
It does help that the games are like 30 minutes shorter with the pitch clock now, because I think it was something like the average time of games last year was like 2 hours, 50 minutes. Now it's like 2 hours, 20 minutes. So the games do go a lot faster. By the way, Jordan, and like, do you have that graphic ready?
Oh, it's up now. It's
nice. I didn't even notice.
I don't want to like, I didn't really give a shit whether the pitch clock was coming in, but I think it's undoubtedly an improvement. All I want them to do is start calling balls and strikes with the computer and stop using the stupid umpires, and I'm going to be right as rain.
All right, let's see. In terms of your tiers exposure, Josh, how did it compare to mine? So tier 1, I assume that Ronald Acuna is your guy, but tier 2, what are you getting to there?
Top 2 guys are Olsen and Alvarez. They're basically tied. I have Olsen like 0.3 of a point ahead, but he only finished ahead of him in tier by like 0.7%. Semien would be the bottom guy there. But I think there's a pretty clear line in the sand between Olsen and Alvarez, and then Tucker, Altuve, Semien. Like, obviously, Acuna is on an island in the first one.
Yeah. So, by the way, same with me in tier 2 was I'd said Olsen number 1. I had Alvarez behind him, but like I'd also mentioned, it just makes more sense when you could correlate your players and get more Braves to go ahead and do that with Matt Olson as well. Tier 3, where we have a couple of Braves. We got Ozzie Albies and Austin Riley. Was there another Brave you liked in this tier, or was it somewhere else you were leaning?
No, it was Albies and Riley certainly pulled away from the pack. Gunnar Henderson and Alex Bregman, not quite near the top.
Tier 4, where I actually got to Lindor as the number 1 option. But the reason I said Ozuna is my favorite is just because if I have Braves that I like the most in tier 1, 2, and 3, it just kind of makes sense to have Ozuna there as well if you're building a lineup.
Yeah, Ozuna came in 3rd for me. It was Lindor pretty clearly, then Abrams pretty clearly, and then a pretty sizable gap before getting to Ozuna. But if you're like trying to play tiers, and at least from like a GPP perspective and trying to correlate that, then like getting to Ozuna sort of works a little bit better there. Like if you're going to go to Lindor in tier 4, you're going to be very likely to go to Pete Alonso in tier 5.
I think you're going to be likely to go to Pete Alonso in tier 5 no matter what. But
same.
I should mention that you do have Sean Murphy in tier 5 as well. So you can make a 5-man Brave stack in this, which is fairly absurd. So if you want to keep the stacking correlation, you go to Sean Murphy here. But Pete Alonso, my number 1 overall option in tier 5.
My problem is just like a complete aversion to things named Sean.
That's fair. Is he even in the chat right now?
Unfortunately.
I don't see him in there.
I responded to him earlier telling him.
Okay.
He said that Ronald Acuna was a terrible play today. So, I mean, like, if you're going to start a show off like that.
We've got, Chris Williams in the chat saying LOL. So you don't know what it, like, he's not saying LOL relative to anything, but I guarantee you it's related to the Sean V comment there. Tier 6, the one I found tier 6 to be the tightest tier of all of them. I had Santander over everybody else, but how about yourself?
Santander by a nose, 15.9% for Santander, 15.6 for Torres, 15.6 for Stanton, 15.2 for Nate Lowe. So those 4 guys might as well have the exact same projection. If I ran it again, that order might actually be a little bit different. I forget what I do for sims for tiers. Let me see. How many did I run? I ran 20,000. So, enough. But if I ran it again, those guys could wiggle. I don't really have much of a preference there. I think it's pretty clearly those 4 and then the other 3. But sifting through that a lot of those picks would just be based on what you did before.
Yeah, fair enough. And as for tiers, once again, thank you very much for the super chat, Ace of Spade. And now we can move back to talking about some of the pitchers and the value options on the slate, where let's talk about these guys who are grouped together in like the 7 to 8K range, because there's only 3 of them. Kyle Gibson, Patrick Sandoval, and Clark Schmidt. All of them are popular. We've got Clark Schmidt projected for just around 40% ownership. Kyle Gibson right around 30%. Sandoval 25%. So the field is playing all 3 of these guys, and all of them being pretty popular. Do you have a preference between Gibson, Sandoval, and Clark Schmidt today, Josh?
Not really. I guess I have an anti-preference based on what I have, and that is not Patrick Sandoval. I have 22% of Gibson and 24% of Schmidt. I have 3% of Patrick Sandoval. So the easier way for me to talk about that is just simply going the opposite direction of those things. And I don't necessarily have like a huge problem with Sandoval. I think he should probably be like 20%, 25% owned. I don't think that he's wildly over-owned or anything like that. He grades out really well for me in terms of, just being a guy at 7,700, but he's not a massive strikeout guy. And the real thing that's stopping me here is that I think that the Baltimore Orioles stack is a little under-owned, which is causing me to get to the Orioles, which subsequently is stopping me from getting to Patrick Sandoval. So while I don't have Sandoval, I have 25 Orioles stacks. That's the reason that I don't have Sandoval.
All right. Yeah. So we are, I think a lot of our lineups are going to be fairly aligned today. The Orioles are my second most rostered stack on the entire slate. As for my lineups, I am overweight to the field on Clark Schmidt. My 2 most rostered pitchers today are Strider and Schmidt. I do have like fairly chalky lineup builds today. That's the way that, at least when I was running lineups, it came out to be most optimal. So I have the most of Clark Schmidt in this tier. I'm overweight to him. Great match for him against the Detroit Tigers. The price point is kind of broken as well, $7,100. And when I talked about him on FanDuel before, I said even at $8,800, I'm willing to play Clark Schmidt over on FanDuel. Yeah. He's got a great matchup. He's got a great price point. And also, he's been a fairly solid pitcher this year. He may have a 4.56 ERA, but he's run into some bad luck. He's a 3.16 BABIP. So his underlying numbers look better. He's a 4.13 expected ERA, a 4.26 FIP. But most importantly, the good matchup and some strikeout upside. 23% strikeout rate this year, 24% last year. So Clark Schmidt is my favorite of these options, also happens to be the cheapest. And then as for Gibson and Sandoval, I'm underweight to both of them. And partially due to my Orioles exposure, partially also due to the fact that just the ownership being what it is on Sandoval. I don't have any lineups with Patrick Sandoval out of my 150 today. So no exposure to Sandoval, and the Orioles are my second most rostered stack.
All right. Well, we are very much talking about the same shit.
Cheapies,
I like it.
We're talking about I don't like this. Pitchers, is there anything here that stands out to you in any kind of meaningful way?
I mean, are we really going to have these conversations? Should we do this? I don't even want to say this kind of shit on the stream.
I'm setting you up to be unhappy.
I don't think I should even talk about how I have 13% of Matt Manning and 13% of Joan and 7% of Dakota Hudson today. Should we talk about those things? I mean, luckily, I had to make an adjustment. I had that butt guy that's going for the Mets today a lot, but I've walked that one back quite a bit.
Well, that's good, because I know that you were not thrilled before the show started about the fact that you had exposure to him.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like you have an absurd amount of exposure to any of these guys. By the way, because I had told you also that like I end up getting overweight the field on Adon on a lot of slates as well. I do have 12% of Adon. It's not like any kind of crazy stand, but I do have some exposure to him. And it's funny because the Mets are my most rostered stack. They're also really popular. So the two stacks I have the most exposure to today, it's the Mets, it's the Orioles. The Mets obviously super popular today. The Orioles less so. But I understand why the field is getting to the Mets. In large field tournaments, though, I don't think Adon is a terrible leverage play just because the Mets are going to be so popular. Adon does have decent stuff. He has some strikeout ability, but it really is more to do with leverage than anything else. But, no kind of real crazy stand. I have 12% of Adon.
Yeah, I have 13. Like I said, it's not like I'm advocating for him. If you're playing one lineup, this is not a direction you're going at all. Yeah. But in 150, I think that it's a little bit different. And it's not invalidating my Mets stand. I'm neutral to the Mets. I'm way lighter on stacks, but I have like a pretty decent chunk of one-off or two-man type Met stacks. So my bigger priorities are unfortunately the White Sox and the Orioles. But yeah, this is just a situation where this is a 6-game slate. There are 12 pitchers that you can roster. That's just it. That's what we know, which means that you need to start evaluating those guys a little bit differently. I don't think that someone like Jones should be 1 or 2% owned today because that just doesn't fit the way that math works. I have him, somewhere in that 5 to 10% range of being a top 2 pitcher. Anytime he's that, you have to have him at 5,900. So right away, I think that he should probably be like 7% owned by default. And that sort of situation is I actually have it at 10% for what he should be today, which I think is probably a little too extreme. The moment you see that and have him at 1%, anything that you're using is likely going to push him in some degree to be in your lineups.
Yeah, and it's no different than like the easiest way to look at this kind of data. Like if you look at our top pitchers tool on the site, like we have Adon with an 8% chance of being one of the top 2 scoring pitchers on the slate. We have him with a pretty high chance of being one of the top 2 value pitchers on the slate just because of how cheap he is, not because he projects exceptionally well. So just to kind of put this in context, we have Adon with an 8% chance to be one of the top 2 scoring pitchers, and we have him with the 3rd lowest projection of any pitcher on the entire slate. We don't project him well. His price is super cheap. We project the Mets to be the highest scoring team on the slate. That still warrants getting to some exposure to Adon because of how low his ownership is, combined with the fact the Mets are 20% owned as a stack, the most popular team on the slate.
Yep. No disagreements. Look, when push comes to shove, his performance is going to look bad way more frequently than it looks good. I don't really give a shit about that at all, because when his performance looks good, I am taking a sizable step ahead of the competition because I think he does that more frequently than his ownership implies that he does.
Super chat from Chris Williams. He says, now that the Muppet who calls Josh's takes bad, yet Josh's takes maybe 5 figures. Let's go to business. hit the luck button, people, a tone. I think he meant the like button, but the luck button doesn't hurt either. There's nothing wrong with hitting the luck button every once in a while and getting lucky on a slate. But to Chris's point, yeah, do us a favor, guys. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then also as a follow-up, Chris Williams gifted out 10 YouTube memberships out, which we appreciate you. And then Malukar counterpunches with 5 memberships gifted out of his own. So we got the battle going back and forth in the YouTube chat. Guys, thank you for the support. We do appreciate you. As far as these cheap pitchers, the one that I'm overall getting the most of is Tuki Tucson, and he's 8% owned, decent matchup against the Kansas City Royals, but still, like, I don't have any of these guys that I'm really prioritizing in any kind of significant way, but I have ownership in the teams to Tucson.
I have him at 10%. The most I have of anybody below Clark Schmidt is 13%. So no giant stands. I kind of have everybody but Jose Butto.
Fair enough. No.
So I assume he'll be. Is it Butto?
It is now.
Okay. But no, I have 2% of him. Like, it's even he didn't slip through the cracks, but not taking a big stand there. So I assume he's going to end up being the best one.
You didn't do it intentionally, but it was very funny where you started your sentence by saying "but no" after I said "but ho." I enjoyed it. So if we look at the rest of the pitchers, anything else you really want to talk about? If not, we could build some lineups in the lineup generator.
No, I mean, like, I don't think there's too much to talk about here with pitching. I think it's pretty, like, most people can evaluate Strider, Scherzer, and Verlander on their own. I think that Gibson, Sandoval, Schmidt tier just exists today. It's soaking up about 100% of ownership. Like, you're kind of picking one of those guys no matter what. And then everything below Clark Schmidt is just a different flavor of gross. Nobody's like, oh, you know what's really awesome? Dakota Hudson. Like, nobody has that stance for any of these guys. Jordan Lyles is 15% owned. There's no stand here. So I'm sifting through it as much as I can with a little bit of all of these guys. But I think we've hit on pitching pretty well.
And we've got a Hef Love saying, do we ding Clark Schmidt because he's facing Detroit back-to-back? I don't really consider that all that much, because it's like, I understand the idea of like, hey, sort of the same thought where I was like, when you face a pitcher multiple times through an order, like, they're less effective because offenses get a good look at them. But it's really hard to know what the impact is on any individual start. So I don't really factor that all that much. Is it something that's ever on your mind, Josh?
Never.
All right. So
if Spencer Strider pitched against the same team every day, I still think he's a Cy Young candidate.
Yeah, no, that's a good point as well. I mean, depending what the team is, if he's facing the Dodgers in Los Angeles every day, it's probably a little bit more of uphill sledding than if he's at home against the Rockies every day.
Like, his stats are going to look worse, but I don't think it doesn't, to me, it doesn't change his talent. He's just in a worse matchup that needs to be adjusted for. Like, that's the reason that we have stats that are park adjusted and opponent adjusted and things, because some people are going to have a different setup. But if you just ran Strider out there against the Dodgers, he would still grade out really, really well. His raw data would look terrible. Like, all the dum-dums would have no idea why he's not still good, but he'd still be good.
And then some other questions we have in Discord, and I think we can answer them together because for me, the answer is going to be the same. We've got Cap in Kella says, what is our favorite single entry strategy for? Okay, so these are a little bit different. Captain Akella says, what is the DK single entry tournament strategy for tonight? So by and large, my lineups are pretty chalky today, with the one exception being, just like Josh, I'm getting to a bunch of Baltimore Orioles who are going to be good leverage against a fairly chalky Patrick Sandoval. The Orioles are projected for almost no ownership today. This is not going to be a popular team. It's a very good offense. Sandoval is a decent, but it's not like he's a world beater of a starting pitcher. So when you get a spot where one of the best offenses in baseball on a small slate is very contrarian, and they're going to go against a very mediocre pitcher that's going to be super chalky, my favorite way to approach single entry is to stack the Baltimore Orioles, and that's the way I think it's most reasonable to differentiate today.
It's hard for me to answer this because I've gotten so far away from like thinking about what my single entry team would be, because I just don't think about it like that. My guess is that it would be more likely to be the Mets or the White Sox, because they're just pulling more ownership. I'd be surprised if I got to Baltimore. You can take on a lot of chalk if you go to Baltimore and get Strider and Schmidt and fill out however you would like. My assumption is that I would probably have a chalkier stack with slightly different final 3 bats, Strider plus somebody random is my guess. But I don't really think about the two things all that differently. You do have to adjust for the fact that a smaller field, a single entry contest, is going to be more concentrated to the chalk at the top. That generally leads you to a spot where you probably want to be around that like third or fourth team. That's where it starts. You start to see that break where the top teams pull in that like a little bit more ownership, but there's only so much that the bottom teams can give back. Like you can't, it's not like you can go into the negative for ownership. So I tend to look a little bit more in these situations just off the top of my head at like a team that might be like third or fourth or fifth here that might not see that same sort of jump in single entry.
Yeah. By the way, we just saw the Tim Anderson is scratched from the White Sox lineup, so there is no more Tim Anderson.
I have 37% Tim Anderson right now, so that should be a decent change.
I had 18% Tim Anderson, so I just really quickly took him out of everything. And let's see who is in the White Sox lineup now instead. Was Sosa in the lineup? We've got Andrus leading off, playing shortstop.
It's Andrus.
Was he not in the lineup before?
Elvis Andrus just swapped straight into first spot for Tim Anderson. So I assume nothing will change for me. I'll just end up with a comparable amount of Elvis Andrus, assuming that he's relatively cheap and a shortstop.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, he has to be cheaper than Tim Anderson. I don't even know what his price point is because I have no idea. Number one, I don't usually know what players' price points are anyway, but I definitely didn't know the price point if somebody wasn't in the lineup.
I haven't updated anything yet, so I'm still waiting for like another 5-10 minutes. I would really prefer to get this Angels lineup, but now that we got the Baltimore one, I might just run it once this White Sox lineup hits for me.
So Andrus is 3,300.
Same price.
Oh my God, the exact same price. Yeah, I'm actually just going to upload the exact. I'm just going to do a global swap. This is super.
There you go. Yeah, I don't blame you.
Andrus, and they both have, let's see, same. Andrus is second base and shortstop eligibility.
Oh, okay.
So you
could fit him a better play
as well. But yeah, I mean, easy peasy. And he's also going to be, with the slate starting 20 minutes from now, he's going to be much lesser owned than Tim Anderson would. But I understand he's a lesser hitter. So like he just should be lower owned. But I mean, he's going to be lower owned than what he should be for this scenario just because of how late this news broke.
Anybody that doesn't use technology to build their lineups is now never getting to Elvis Andrus.
True. Well, unless they're just doing the global swap.
Yeah, but like those types of people probably aren't sitting around crunching data, like crunching MLB news for the final 20 minutes.
True.
Unless they're watching this show, that's going to be a tough sell. All right, so White Sox, all I have to do is manually override for Elvis Andrus.
One thing I'm going to be curious for when you update your lineup, because I'm doing this the lazy way, where I'm just going to swap my lineups from Tim Anderson to Elvis Andrus. I had 18% Anderson. I'm cool with 18% of Andrus. I'm curious to see how much your ownership on Andrus is different from what your ownership was on Tim Anderson.
Let's find out. I won't have an answer for you for a couple of minutes, but I will have an answer for you.
And we've got a super chat that came in. This is from Hog Wired. He wants to know Benintendi or Waters for last outfield for spot for DK Cash. That is almost certainly going to be Benintendi.
I would be shocked if that's Waters. Unless Waters has a broken price tag and I didn't notice it today, that is going to be Benintendi by default.
Yeah, Benintendi.
Waters is more owned than I thought he would be.
Benintendi batting second, projected for 14% ownership. Waters batting 7, projected for... Yeah, it's going to be Benintendi for me, but I do agree with you that like at first glance, I thought that was going to... It's still fairly easily Benintendi, but it's not like... It's not by the chasm I thought it was going to be.
No. Why do I... Let's see, I have Waters at proper ownership 8% and Benintendi at 12%.
Yeah. So a little bit of a lean there towards Benintendi.
Where are you hiding Tim Anderson? There you are. We're going to change you to Elvis Andrus in the ownership, and I will cut your ownership a little bit.
Let's upload
Perfect.
These lineups.
Save. Man.
Global swap. And then we'll be good to go. And then once you figure it out, I'm curious to see how much less, or even potentially because he's got more positional eligibility. So maybe there is a world where we end up with a little bit more of Andrus than what you were getting to of Tim Anderson for that reason.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'll say this much though. I don't know if you've thought about it yet. I don't know, because I've less been like playing baseball more this year, and it's been a pretty good baseball year altogether. For the first time in a while, I'm like very, very not looking forward to the amount of work that the NBA takes. Although we've been
I
getting a lot of
coming
late scratches and stuff lately.
coming from Josh Engleman, I cannot believe that to be the case where he's looking forward to the baseball more than basketball.
So I want to watch basketball and follow basketball and everything, but from a content perspective, it is way more work.
Yes, no, it is absolutely for sure more work.
Like
There's just a lot more
I
going
don't
on.
stress about baseball during the day. I don't have to care. The lineup just has to show up, and then all of a sudden I have an answer. Whereas for basketball, it's like, oh shit, I got to pay attention to this all day, all the way until 6:58, and hope nothing happens at that particular moment.
Yeah, which
Ugh.
something always happens.
And it always
for
does.
basketball. Something
Yep.
always does. We got another question from Mr. Cool Cam. He wants to know what our favorite contrarian stack is for FanDuel today.
Orioles.
It's just
Yeah.
Orioles. The Orioles' favorite contrarian stack by a mile today. There aren't
Yeah.
really any other contrarian stacks that I have like a significant stand on like I do for the Orioles. So Baltimore for me. Let's pull up the lineup generator, Jordan, and we'll build some lineups there, see what ends up standing out. And then over the course of the show, Josh and I have really tipped our hands in terms of stacks that we're getting to, but still we'll discuss that as well. For now, Jordan, go with DraftKings, build some contrarian lineups, particularly it's only a 6-game slate. I want to see what we get to. If you guys want to sign up for our lineup generator for baseball, sign up using the link below. Get 50% off when you sign up for the first time. So less than $10 when you get access to this here. And just save some of these lineups here and we'll see what we end up getting for the exposure. And I also want to answer a question from, where was it? Here it was. Julian Jasso in the YouTube chat said, after signing up with Owner's Box, how do you get the month of NFL Sims? You're going to get an email from us with a code, and that code, then you go to the sign up page, you enter that code in, and you will get it. So we get updates from Owner's Box. I believe it's once a day with all the people who have signed up since the last time they updated. And then once we get that with your email address, we send out that email to you with the code. Lineups.
Not bad.
Lineups here. So we're probably getting to Tim Anderson in some of these lineups just because he was just scratched. So that is something to note. But if you guys see Tim Anderson in these lineups and you're just global swap, Tim Anderson to Elvis Andrus. That's going to be the easiest way to go. As far as exposures here, a bunch of Mets, a bunch of White Sox, pitchers. We're getting to a bunch of Strider, a bunch of Max Scherzer. I guess we're finding it pretty easy to pay up for pitcher today if we have 80% of Scherzer and 80% of Strider and 65% Scherzer.
Yeah, the White Sox are a real problem today because other than Luba being in the lineup at 5,200, the next most expensive bat is 3,400. Like, it's just very, very easy to find value today if you need to. So if you want today to be a dueling pay up option, you are not going to struggle at all to find that salary hitting.
Are you getting too much of the White Sox as a stack? They are projected to be the third most popular team on the slate.
They're going to be my most exposed stack.
Okay. So if I look at my stack exposures, which we're at the part in the show where I have too many tabs pulled up on my computer, but stack exposures, I'm right about even with the field on the White Sox. They're my third most rostered stack. I'm the Mets 1, I'm the Orioles 2, the White Sox 3, but it's no real stand on the White Sox because I have them in 14% of my lineups and they're projected for 12.5% as a team. So I'm about even with the field on the White Sox. But looking at my individual player exposures, I'm getting to a ton of these guys as one-offs to save some salary and fill out lineups.
Ooh, okay. So I just ran my refresh now. Man, that is not in any way how I was expecting that to shake out. I ended up getting to a little bit more Baltimore, but I didn't expect that to happen because the lineup that I had run before that, Jordan Westburg was in, and he had that, a really nice MPE and price tag. And I thought that was going to hold a little bit more weight, but I ended up getting to basically that same amount of Baltimore once again, even with that Westburg change. I just made a giant mistake and tried to sort 11,000 lineups. No, it didn't go as bad. I tried to sort all 11,000 lineups by rank, and I didn't think that was going to work, but ultimately it did. So I ended up with 27% Elvis Andrus.
All right. So pretty similar to what you had because you had, 32 or 33% of Tim Anderson, if I remember correctly.
Something like that. Yeah.
Not too much of a change. Andrus is the lesser hitter, but has the better position eligibility. So ultimately you do end up with pretty much the same between the two of them. I did the global swap. And John Roy in chat said that he doesn't play Tim Anderson. Well, you certainly don't want to play Tim Anderson today. The easiest way to not play Tim Anderson. As for the other offenses we're getting, or a lot of the, I'll say individual hitters we're getting to with our offenses today, Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo, Andrew Vaughn, Pete Alonso, just, I mean, all of the Mets and White Sox showing up here. And that is the case for me as well. Even though I have, 14% White Sox stocks, I get to a bunch of these guys individually. It is one of the best sources of salary savings on the entire slate. And I'll scroll down a little bit, Jordan. I'm curious to see which pitcher we got the third most of. I assume it's going to be Clark Schmidt, but maybe, yeah, Clark Schmidt. So we got Clark Schmidt there in 25% of lineups. So yeah, Max Scherzer, Spencer Strider, Clark Schmidt. If you're making a bunch of White Sox stacks, it really isn't all that difficult to get to Strider and Scherzer in the same lineups, at least in that kind of build. Let's make some lineups for FanDuel as well, Jordan. We'll check out the results. And then Josh and I will round out what we're doing with stacks, and we'll do some home run picks, and then we'll get out of here for the night.
Boom. Love it.
FanDuel.
Love it.
Let's see what we're doing on FanDuel. Same deal. Contrarian lineups, Jordan. I want to see what we could get to for making contrarian builds. I have a feeling that it's still going to be a lot of Mets and a lot of Spencer Strider, but yes, does seem to be the case. 45% Strider, 40% Clark Schmidt. So Clark Schmidt, we are getting to a decent amount of there on FanDuel. Stack exposures. Interesting. The Washington Nationals in 35% of FanDuel lineups. The Mets 65% for us here. A little bit more spread out, but lineup generator doesn't like our Baltimore Orioles today, Josh.
Not so much. That's fine. I'll worry about that later.
Yeah, more for us on the Baltimore Orioles.
Yeah, I don't think I needed more. I needed less for me, particularly. I have way more than I would like really want given their current ownership. If anybody's really curious, though, I only have 4% of Gunnar Henderson. So if anybody's curious as to who is going to be the successful player for Baltimore, it will certainly be him.
All right, let me see how much of Gunnar Henderson do I have? I have Gunnar Henderson in 19% of lineup. So if he's what carries the Orioles stacks, I'll be cool with it. Although with that said, I did bet him to homer yesterday and he didn't homer. So there will be a part of me that feels a little bit snake bitten if he ends up homering today. But I'll see after we wrap up the show which home run props look good in Odd Shopper, and maybe it is one where I'll be going back to him. See what
I have 4% Gunner, 6% McCann. Everybody else is 12 or higher.
We've got super chat here from Clintwood 83. He wants to know what are our thoughts on two pitchers from the same game on DraftKings. I don't have any issue with it.
No, I don't even pay attention to it.
Yeah. So is there a little bit of negative correlation because only one pitcher could get the win bonus? Sure, but it's not like game breaking. I care more about the win bonus on FanDuel, and the way that I'll leverage it sometimes is like if a pitcher is going to be like 40% owned and he's going up against a good starting pitcher on the other side who's going to be really low owned, that's where I think the leverage could be more in play, where you're only rostering the one pitcher. But it's not like the biggest thing in the world for me. I have lineups all the time that have two pitchers from the same game. Now, with that said, if you're asking from a standpoint of should you go out of your way to roster two pitchers from the same game? No. It's just run your lineups, whichever pitchers are the best. Don't worry about whether they are in the same game or different games. It doesn't really make any big difference.
It's 4 points for a win. So at best, the expected value of that win for these guys is 2 points. So right away, you're removing 2 points from your potential player pool, but you're also not factoring into the equation. You are potentially more unique by having them both for people thinking that you shouldn't have them both. So, and by the way, 2 points is what happens if no matter what the starting pitcher gets the win. In theory, you're cutting that in half. And what you're really talking about is lowering the expected points of that lineup by 1, which is mostly insignificant in this scenario.
Yeah, not going to make a big difference. We see GPP winnings all the time, two pitchers that are in the same game.
Let's see. I have it actually. So I'll just go to the first one I see. So I have Scherzer getting 0.36. So that's, I have Scherzer's win points assigned to his projection at 1.4 today. And I'm assuming it's pretty comparable for Verlander.
Yeah. So there you go. You're costing yourself. It's actually less than a point you're costing yourself.
Yeah.
Nothing that's really too big of a deal. But anyway, these are the lineups that we're getting to in the lineup generator. As for the Mets, we got the most exposure to here. It is Pete Alonso. It is Jeff McNeil, Francisco Lindor, and Mark Ventos. So if you're looking to make a Mets stack, which is the team we got the most of on both FanDuel and DraftKings, there you go. Those are the players that we got the most of. let's talk a little bit more about our stacks, Josh. And
yeah,
listen, at this point in the show, if you guys have been listening to our conversation, you kind of know which teams are that we're getting to. For me, my three most rostered stacks, it is the Mets, it is the Orioles, and then it is also the Chicago White Sox. So the White Sox, I'm more about in line with the field because they're projected for 12.5% ownership. But those are the only three teams I have double-digit exposure to. Who are your three most rostered offenses, Josh?
well, this is going to be a pretty boring response for the people, but we're going to give it anyway. As I look at it right now, the team that I have the most exposure to is the Chicago White Sox. I have 20% exposure going to Chicago, 24 5-mans, 10 4-mans, and then assorted 3-2-1s. I have 19% of the Mets, so just behind, which is about neutral to the field, 28 5-mans, 12 4-mans, and assorted the rest of it. And then we have the 5% aggregate owned Baltimore Orioles. I have 16% of them, 24 5-mans, 6 4-mans, assorted random shit. So I'm 3xing the stacks on the Orioles, close to 2xing the White Sox. And then I have 10 Angels stacks, 8 Nats, 8 Royals, a bunch of scattered bullshit everywhere else.
And of the teams that are low owned today, because we have a crazy, crazy gap in ownership, we have the Mets, the Braves, the White Sox, the Nationals, the Royals, the Yankees are all projected for double-digit ownership. All of them are 10+% as a team. And then every other team is fairly contrarian. So we're talking about the Orioles, the Rangers, the Tigers, the Astros, the Angels, the Cardinals. Those teams are all projected for less than 5% ownership as a team. Of those teams, the Orioles by far are the team that I think have the most upside from a standpoint of, number one, they're a good offense. Number two, they have a decent matchup against Patrick Sandoval, is also really popular. These other teams that are contrarian are going up against the elite starting pitchers on the slate, where it's the Rangers against Verlander. It's the Tigers. Maybe Clark Schmidt isn't elite, but he's serviceable and the Tigers suck. So sure. Tigers, they're really contrarian. The Astros are really contrarian. They're going up against Scherzer. The Angels are really contrarian against Kyle Gibson, and the Angels offense is in a terrible state right now. And then you got the Cardinals going up against Spencer Strider. So by process of elimination, if you want to be contrarian, it just is most logical to me to go to the Baltimore Orioles. But are there any of these other really low-owned teams, Josh, that are standing out to you in any way?
Nobody specifically. I kind of like the Angels in the same way that I like the Orioles, but they just happen to be really bad right now with no Shohei Ohtani or Mike Trout. So do I have them? Yeah. I have 10 Angel stacks. I have 6% of them. That's more than what they're getting, but it's not a massive stand. I do think the Astros are probably a little underrepresented. That's a different kind of story. You kind of have to pay up to get to what you want to. I'm getting to Altuve, to Alvarez, to Kyle Tucker. So I'm buying the power at the very least. I think the team that we actually need to talk about right now, I'm not even, maybe you said it and I was being Adam and ignoring everything coming out of your mouth. Do we need to talk a little bit about the Braves? Because they're owned. And not in an insignificant way. And I'm not confident we said anything about them. I have 0 Brave stacks. I do have 5% of them. I have 12% of Ronald Acuna. He's not a guy that I ever really care about getting away from. If I'm running a contrarian stack, I'm more than okay having Ronald Acuna be one of my one-offs. It would be insane not to, no matter what someone like Sean V in chat says. So this is a great park. Dakota Hudson is not a good player. The Braves offense is the best in baseball. It has the highest implied total, but you and I don't believe have talked about them in any sort of favorable light today.
Yeah. So the final question I was going to ask you about stacks is we were kind of separating the teams in terms of the really popular ones from the really contrarian ones. And I had mentioned, I only have 3 teams I have double-digit exposure to. It is the Mets, it is the Orioles, it is the White Sox, which means one of those teams is not the Atlanta Braves. I only have 3% Brave stacks. The only individual player from the Braves that I really have significant exposure to, just like we have very similar rooting interests today. I have 15% of Ronald Acuna. If he goes out and has a decent game, I'm cool with that. But yeah, I'm not really getting to the Braves. The biggest reason is the price point on them and the fact they're very popular.
Yeah, I think that's the same situation for me, because if you want to get to 12-3 Strider, you need to make some real discounts in the final spots of that stack if you also want to go to Atlanta. You want to be the guy that stacks Ozuna, Rosario, Murphy, Arcia, Harris. That's still a really good stack, but you're also leaving out the 4 best guys in that lineup. So much of the Braves value is because you get second, third, and first in 3 of the first spots of the order. It's not just outfield spots that you're cornering the market on. You could really get to something good here. I begrudge no one for getting to Atlanta. The team looks great. The matchup's fantastic. The park works. Every bit of it is fine, but we're at a point now where like their price tags are to a level that you don't really like. I can't picture any offenses being like that unless they're in cores. Everybody's expensive always.
So one thing I like about my builds today and our builds really in general, Josh, is what people are going to be doing to stack the Braves at their price point is they're not playing, like Spencer Strider with a bunch of Brave stacks. What they're doing is they're playing 3 pitchers. They're playing Clark Schmidt. They're playing Kyle Gibson. They're playing Patrick Sandoval. The reason that Sandoval has as much ownership as he does is because people are using the salary savings to pay up for the Atlanta Braves. So if you and I are building lineups where we're going to be underweight to the field on the Braves and we're also attacking Sandoval, like we're really getting a lot of leverage against what the field is doing in general.
Without question. Yeah, like I'm looking at it right now at some of the lineups that I generated to get to the Braves. They're gross, man. They're gross. They don't grade out great. Like I have some that would have been viable options to me post sorting that aren't making the cut, but it falls off a cliff really quick. I did not have a lot of Brave stacks that made it to the top of a 10,000 lineup simulation. And the pitchers that are involved in that, Gibson, Schmidt, Joan, Matt Manning, there's not a person with a heartbeat anywhere near that list. I mean, Clark Schmidt is like a guy, but he's also like a value option for today. It takes me a while to get to a Brave stack with Strider. That lineup does not include Ronald Acuna, nor does the next one that contains Strider. Very hard to get there if you want to do Strider and the real Braves.
I have Brave stacks where it's like, because I'm doing the same thing as you now. I'm kind of like looking at the lineups that are Brave stacks and where the pitchers. And it's like pitching combinations would be like Jonah Don and like Tuki Tucson as like the pitchers to get to the Braves. And those lineups, they're not the most favorable looking. So I only have 3% Brave stacks today. And listen, if they go out as chalk and they score 20 runs, then it will have happened for the 30th time this year, because Braves seem like they never fail as a chalk stack. But today's the day. Today's going to be the day that the chalk Brave stacks finally fail.
Yeah, I feel like if you're going to a Brave stack, you probably want to like. I don't even know what the path is there. Like my top ranked Braves lineup is Gibson and Joan, Murphy, Albies, Arcia, Acuna, Ozuna, 5-man. And then it's MJ Melendez, Ramon Urias, and Andrew Vaughn filling it out. And I'm like, I'm happy to have MJ Melendez, plenty of pop. Don't mind Andrew Vaughn at all. And by the time I get to my last guy, I don't give a shit. But like Kyle Gibson and Joan, like you're really trying to thread a real narrow needle. Ooh,
uploading all my lineups for the final time. I think I'm actually going to play Jordan Lyles in single entry just because the way that I build my single entry lineups and try to figure out what ownership is going to be there. I think in single entry, I don't think the Braves are going to be crazy represented because the field's going to be playing Strider really heavily. Yeah. What I think the field is going to be doing very heavily in single entry is stacking the Mets and using the White Sox as value options. So the way, especially we've seen ownership go in single entry this year, I think the Mets are going to be like 40% owned as a stack. And then individual hitters from the White Sox are going to be also like 30 to 35%. So yeah, I think I'm going to play Jordan Lyles in single entry just for some of that leverage off of the White Sox, and then just hoping they're as popular as I think they are. But we'll see. It's always hard.
I'm anxious to see the ownership on the Braves for single entry.
I don't think it's going to be, it'll be popular, but I don't think as much as the White Sox or the Mets.
I would agree with you there. Interesting balance, though, for today.
Yeah, we shall see what ends up happening. Any other stacks they really want to talk about? As far as the one that I'm most underweight to is the Atlanta Braves in terms of these teams that are projected for a lot of ownership. I'm slightly underweight to the field on the Nationals, underweight to the field on the Royals, underweight to the field on the Yankees. But like nothing in an insane way. Like I have like 6 to 8% of those teams, and they're projected for just over 10%. The biggest stand for me, underweight to the Braves. Anything else you want to mention as far as these teams?
Not really. I'm holding hands for the Mets. I'm 2xing the White Sox. The team that's not owned that I'm getting too heavily is the Orioles, 16%. And then I have, 7% of the Nats, 7% of the Royals, not too far off. Pretty big fades, I guess, for Yankees and Braves. I only have 4% and 5% respectively. The Braves, obviously, the biggest fade of anything here. So really excited that I got to talk about how much I like Atlanta, and then I have to go cheer against their offense today. That should be a real blast. Go Strider, though.
All right, so now let's wrap it up with this dongs. Everybody wants to see the dong pick. So Josh, let's finish up. Who are you going to pick to homer today? And you are forever married to this pick, and the people are going to remember this. I've found this out myself, because when my dong pick hits, you know how I find out? Because a lot of times I'll actually forget who my the internet reminds me, and I hear about it on Twitter. Dong of the day. Who you picking homer, Josh?
Hold on. I know that I fucking fixed this formula. Why is it wrong now?
Well, I'll give you guys my home run pick. I don't want to. All right, I have to go with the Baltimore Oriole. I don't want to go with.
God damn it! Did I not save that?
Would you fuck up?
I have a reference to the righty home run rate for each player, but for some reason it's not pulling in the opposite side. No big deal.
So I'm going to go with the Baltimore Oriole here. It's the team I'm most leveraged to on the slate, yourself as well, Josh. So I'll be a coward if I don't pick a Baltimore Oriole. And the Oriole I have the most exposure today is Ryan Mountcastle. So that's going to be my home run pick. Ryan Mountcastle, he's got some homer upside. He's going up against the lefty and Patrick Sandoval. So Ryan Mountcastle, that is my home run pick. Do you have one, Josh? And if you're still trying to sort out your data and you're not able to, it's okay.
No, we're good. I sorted down to my top 10. A couple of these guys played on the early slate. So I'm going to change it to top 20. That way I'm getting a little bit bigger of a sample here. Definitely need to fix that formula when I'm done this. That's going to bother me to no end. Because I want to give a real answer. Like all the names that I just sorted were Aaron Judge.
Yeah,
I'm not Spags.
Yeah.
So
yeah, or Eric. That's what Eric does. Eric does too. Eric will be like, "Oh, you can't take this guy because he's plus 340 to homer," and then he takes somebody at Coors Field.
Yeah, Spags would always just be like, "I'll take Giancarlo Stanton on the moon," and it's like, all right, man, obviously. Okay, we're going to go off the beaten path for one of these bad boys. Let's go. I don't have a single Oriole showing up, which is really annoying. I'm going to go against a relatively chalk pitcher. Give me Kerry Carpenter.
Oh, look at you. All right, so it's way off the beaten path. I like the balls on Josh going to Kerry Carpenter against Clark Schmidt today. And some of the ones that we have in YouTube chat, read these off, by the way. Malokar's going with Anthony Santander. Santander, by the way, is my third most rostered Oriole, so I don't have an issue with that. Obi-Wan is going with Gunnar Henderson. We've got Sotex. He's going with Altuve for another 3-homer night. So we got Altuve, had 2 homers 2 days ago. He had 3 homers. He had a stretch where he had 5 homers and 6 at bats. So Sotex is riding with Jose Altuve. The boy from Cali's got Michael Harris. And then we've got also another one from him where he is going with Sean Murphy there. So, guys, Thank you very much for watching the show. If you've not done yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our podcast channel, because if you like it, you subscribe there, you leave us a 5-star review, you got a chance to win 1 free year of our NFL package. All our stuff in there, the Sims, the contest generator, all that comes with it. And all you have to do for a chance to win is subscribe to our podcast channel. Leave us a 5-star review and just write some nice words. It could be something funny. It could be something that we helped you win a bunch of money. We appreciate all of them. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great night. We'll be back here tomorrow. Good luck.